Hold on, let me get my
All right,
camera.
folks. Good evening, WNBA and women's basketball fans, and welcome into the WNBA 365 Network, your 24/7, 365 comprehensive home for everything revolving around the WNBA and the rest of the women's basketball universe. Back with you folks on the eve of a pretty much a brand new season, folks, on the eve of National Championship Game Day. And for the next hour, folks, school is in session here on the WNBA 365 Network. This is WNBAU National Championship Central for Monday night, April 4th, 2016. For the meantime, joined right now by a two-man show right now. Joined this evening by Crystal Thomas, and now joined in the hangout by Tanisha Stewart, both up in Los Angeles, California, and of course, Cal McClure joining you folks here from Studio 171 in San Diego. Shorty and Crystal, good evening on the eve of all the marbles for the NCAA Women's Basketball Championship game tomorrow in Indianapolis. Other than that, how is it going, guys? Good to see you.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, what's up? Came through in the clutch.
With that, folks, of course, this is WNBAU National Championship Central, breaking down all the big news in regards to tomorrow's big event, of course, the national title game between the UConn Huskies and Syracuse Orange. We'll take your input, folks, for the next hour on Twitter at WNBA365, at Calamac3, at ShortyMamba24, or at Pup1010 with the hashtag WNBAU. Or if you are going to view us live tonight, hit us up in the live chat box. We'll get to your commentary live and in full when we can get there as well. All right, guys, of course, the big news of the night is what we're previewing that's happening tomorrow evening on ESPN2. It is the 2016 NCAA Women's Basketball Division I Championship game between the overall number 1 seed University of Connecticut Huskies taking on the number 4 seed Syracuse Orange out of the ACC. For the game tomorrow, of course, Shorty, a lot riding on this game. Of course, this is the national title game. Of course, pitting a UConn team that I believe all of us knew would be in this predicament at the start of the season, but probably not against the team that they would be playing against. Of course, Syracuse upset City as a Cinderella team. Of course, what a intriguing and fun weekend, though, guys, we had leading up to the big dance. Of course, UConn beats Oregon State, but of course, the other matchup, Washington falters to Syracuse. Shorty, give us a rundown or your overall thoughts and a recap about the two games. Obviously, we probably figured that UConn would blow out Oregon State, and it was a pretty good game for a while up until UConn ran away with that game. But of course, the Cinderella matchup of UW and Syracuse as well. That game, very well contested, very well played. Shorty, how about your overall thoughts on the Final Four before we get to the overall predictions and stuff for tomorrow's game? And how about your overall thoughts, though, on the Final Four in your mind? Go for it.
I mean, to be honest, when it comes to the Final Four, I already expected a blowout between UConn and Oregon State, but I was hoping at least that Syracuse and Washington would have been much more closer than what it was. But that was it was a little bit closer than the first matchup, but it was overall just a blowout. I mean, but when it comes to UConn and Oregon State, I mean not Oregon State. No, actually, no, I take that back. A little off right now, but yeah, Oregon State. Yeah, it pretty much went the way everyone expected. I mean, UConn came out. Now it was just a little bit different, only because everyone expected, a great game from Brianna Stewart. Of course, she didn't put up her usual numbers because she was struggling in the first half, especially with foul trouble and things like that. But of course, what makes UConn great is because it's not just that one player. So it's not just that one superstar player in Brianna Stewart. You have everyone to contribute. Man, Morgan Tuck in the first quarter alone already had 10 points, dropping so many threes. I was like, my goodness. And then again, the whole team just contributed, even when it was a down game for Brianna Stewart, and they just railed past Oregon State. And for the second game, Washington Syracuse, again, I wasn't expecting that to be a blowout, but Syracuse handled their business and they did it well. Like I said in the last show, that it was going to come down to 3-point shooting because both teams were great, executing from beyond the arc. But Chantel Osohora can really get going. Oh my goodness, Syracuse game plan for for Washington was very, very, very great. All they did was pretty much trap Kelsey Plum in the backcourt, and they just agitated her all night. She couldn't really get her shots off, and what she did get off, she had to work extra hard for it because that trap, that pressure that they put on Plum, they pretty much made her ineffective and forced everyone else to be good. And like I said, Osa Horse struggled, even though she eventually got her points. But it was Talia Walton, basically the bright spot for Washington, was trying to keep them as close as possible. But again, it was just her and everyone else because Syracuse did a great job shutting down everyone else, including the star player in Kelsey Plum. So it got out of hand for Washington, and Syracuse took the victory. So now we're going to be watching an interesting championship game between UConn and Syracuse. And without saying much, we pretty much know how that's going to play out.
Crystal, I think the thing that probably intrigued me most seeing the games over the weekend was, obviously UConn winning by, a landslide margin once more. But I think, though, more so other than Stewart and Tuck, as we already talked about, what about Katie Lou Smith playing 17 minutes with a broken foot in that game? And now, sadly, she'll be done for the rest of the tournament, obviously. But, seeing that warrior mentality, I'm not going to go down easily, and Katie Lou Smith, obviously a freshman, so there's time for her to grow into, being the future face, perhaps, of this UConn program in the next couple years. But, of course, playing almost 20 minutes with a broken foot is something that I haven't seen since I've seen a lot of hockey players play with broken limbs or guys dying on the bench and being revived and they come back and play a full shift after. I love seeing that mentality of players playing through the pain, and that was something I thought was really, really good to see. And Crystal, Shorty just brought it up, though, right, about, Stewart struggling, but there was other people, to kind of help carry the load and push the boulder downhill for the Huskies in their game, and obviously they won the game 80-51, seeing that go forward. And then, of course, that Syracuse UW game, of course, was very good up until it got, a bit out of control score-wise. Crystal, how about your overall thoughts on how the Final Four went this past weekend over there in Indianapolis?
I think the Final Four was actually good. I think it's probably one of the best Final Fours that I've seen in a while. I kind of knew Syracuse was going to take it to Washington. I just didn't think Washington was, as athletic enough as Syracuse, and they proved that they weren't. Like Shorty said, Kelsey Plum was just she couldn't really get anything going, and that hurt. It hurt her nor Chantel Oshahor could really just do anything. And how about Chantel with that weird shot? I don't know how that goes in. I don't know if that's guardable. I don't know what you can really do for that. But, yeah, overall, I think this Final Four was just probably one of the best I've seen. But I will say I think UConn's going to win, but I think Syracuse is going to give them a tough game. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a game that UConn only wins by probably like 3 or 4 points. I'm expecting a really tough game. I don't know. I kind of feel like an upset can happen, but I know it won't. So wishful thinking on my part.
Shorty, as much as people want to, piss and moan and whine about, there being no parity in women's basketball with how UConn just seems to own every year, in my opinion, I think that there is parity that you saw, 3 new teams in the Final Four this year, which I think is a huge upstep from what we've read in the press and media or heard from the past couple, during this tournament about, this being UConn versus the field. We know it's that every year, but of course it was kind of a bigger deal this year with all the stories that came out about, no parity in women's basketball. But Shorty, what does that say to you, though, about seeing, some fresh faces, though, in the Final Four? Obviously UConn there, but someone else, not South Carolina, not Notre Dame or Baylor, some fresh DNA, some fresh blood injected into the women's basketball field, and now that they're, and in my case, Shorty, I think that there officially is parity now that we have some fresh talent in the Final Four this year. But what do you think and why?
I definitely think, there is, parity in the game, and that to me was one of the storylines that was ignored. I mean, everyone was so focused on UConn and the final score and already advancing to, the national championship game, but they were ignoring the fact that yes, as you brought up, there were three new faces in, the Final Four, that no one expected. I mean, like I said, during the, beginning of the tournament when the brackets came out, I was expecting all four number one seeds to, make it to the Final Four. I did not expect, Washington to be as good as they were in the tournament. Didn't see Syracuse from anywhere, didn't see Oregon State, who, we all knew was great in the Pac-12, but didn't think that they can expand outside of Pac-12. So to see those three new faces, I mean, it was definitely great in my opinion for the women's game, and I definitely think their storylines, even though people did write articles about them and so forth, but I think overall on a national level, those three storylines were ignored because all the attention was on UConn and them supposedly hurting the women's game or whatnot. But I definitely don't buy that at all. And like I said, those three were ignored. But yeah, there is parity, in the game, and I think it's going to continue. You know, it's going to continue to be, more teams step up. Especially with the graduation of UConn's class. There's definitely going to be, more teams step up in the years to come.
Crystal, like I said, as much as people want to piss and moan and whine and complain about no parity in women's basketball, like I said, 3 of the 4 teams in the Final Four this year were fresh faces. Yes, you had UConn, but you had Oregon State, you had Syracuse and Washington also in. And I guess, Crystal, I would ask the same thing though. But what are your thoughts though again about seeing some new, some fresh content, on the women's basketball, big stage basically with seeing these 3 new teams that made it to the Final Four this year in your mind?
I'm happy to see new teams. I mean, after a while, it's kind of the same thing that I've said with the WNBA. You get tired of seeing Minnesota every year going to the championship. It's the same thing. I mean, even though UConn, you still see UConn, at least you're seeing them play somebody else. It's not the same Notre Dames or the same who else, like the South Carolinas and people like that. So I'm kind of happy to see other teams and other teams come up in the world, if you should say it like that. I'm happy to see other teams actually get a chance to prove that they can make it to the tourney as well, or be as big as a UConn, hopefully one day.
So again, folks, like I said, 3 of the 4 teams in the women's Final Four again were fresh faces. Again, you had UConn obviously being there, but also you did have as well Syracuse, Oregon State, and it was Washington, Oregon State, and Syracuse all make it to the Final Four along with UConn this season. Okay, guys, to the big stage tomorrow. Again, UConn, Syracuse 1v4 for all the marbles at Bankers Life Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. Obviously, Shorty, we know a lot of people, except for the ones that did not pick UConn, of course, have the Huskies winning this game. Shorty, your prediction and also any thoughts about the game. Go ahead.
I think it's going to be close. I think Syracuse is definitely going to give UConn all that they can handle, but overall, it's going to be too much of UConn because, like I said, this team is so great because it's more than just one superstar. It's more than just one person. You got everyone at every position willing to come in and contribute and come and play hard. So we'll probably be seeing another blowout. Same formula, close in the first quarter or the first half. Second half, UConn's going to run a train on them, and they're going to win.
Why would you say that?
And not in that context, Crystal. Please have a better mind on this show. Yeah, they're going to ultimately, take it and win it all.
All right, so Shorty's got UConn. Crystal, what do you got?
I'm gonna go with UConn, but I don't know if it'll be a blowout. I kind of feel like that game's gonna be close. If it was a blowout, I mean, obviously it's UConn, so we're not gonna be surprised. But I feel like that's gonna be a really close game. I feel like Syracuse is gonna give them some competition. How much competition, I don't know, but I feel like the game is gonna. I feel like UConn's probably gonna only win by like 10 or something like that.
All right, so we're all going to take UConn, but I say UConn wins by 15. So there's all of our predictions for tomorrow's game going on at this point in time. So again, folks, once more, again, you've got UConn taking on Syracuse tomorrow. I just had a pretty interesting tweet that Kate Fagan, one of our good reporters from ESPNW, had just put out from one of her colleagues, from Frank Iasola, who already won Shorty and Crystal, threw the Knicks under the bus, saying that the Liberty could beat the Knicks on his Twitter timeline a while back. He says, in regards to the title game from today with the men, he says, tomorrow night will be just as emotional when the Syracuse women hit a last-second shot to cut UConn's lead to 38 to end his night. And Kate Fagan quoted and said, definitely a necessary tweet, LOL. So there's a little bit of humor mixed in from the media outlets tonight, again, on the eve of the women's title game tomorrow, again, from the Bankers Life Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana. All right, guys, back to the WNBA stage again, getting ever so closer to draft day. 10 days to go until the 2016 WNBA draft. But, guys, we're going to the Hall of Fame today with the announcement of the 10 inductees into the Naismith Pro Basketball Hall of Fame in Springfield, Mass. And one of the greatest of all time, former Houston Comets legend Cheryl Swoops among the 10 members of the Hall of Fame. Of course, Cheryl, a 4-time champ with the Comets, 3-time MVP, takes her place in basketball immortality in Springfield. Shorty, we think back as we celebrate the 20th season. We think back, though, to this era of the WNBA when the games were sold out in Houston, at the Forum in Los Angeles, and across the rest of the league, Shorty. And just to know that, here is another permanent staple, permanent, signature player, legend, cornerstone of this league, takes her place amongst basketball greatness and immortality. Of course, Shorty, Cheryl Swoops has meant so much to this league, as I mentioned again with the WNBA, having its 20th anniversary of this season and seeing, Cheryl's career across, the 90s to the early 2000s with the Comets, of course, the first, and probably the ever famous and everlasting dynasty of the WNBA. Shorty, to see Cheryl Swoops get inducted into the Hall of Fame, what does her career say to you, though, as you see her get inducted today into the Hall of Fame in Springfield, Mass?
Oh my goodness, Cheryl Swoops was just the ultimate winner, the ultimate champion. I mean, she won at every level. Talking about college, won a national championship at Texas Tech. Talk about the Olympics, winning so many gold medals. You talk about at WNBA level, winning the first 4 championships, in the WNBA with the Comets. So when you think of Cheryl Swoops, you think just winner. Nothing else comes to mind than winner, and she definitely deserved, this chance to finally be a part of the Hall of Fame class, and it is well deserved.
Crystal, we think about the current dynasties in the WNBA. You got the Lynx with 3 championships, the Mercury with 3 championships, the Sparks have back-to-back still from 01 and 02, the Shock even from 03, 06, and 2008 when they won their 3 titles. There is no current dynasty that will ever take the title of greatest team ever away from the Houston Comets. When you can win back-to-back-to-back-to-back championships in any league, is something that, rarely or next to none happens. We've seen how tough it is for teams to repeat in winning back-to-back titles. It has not happened since 2001, 2002 with Los Angeles doing that, of course. But, Crystal, the Comets back in that day, they were and forever, in my opinion, are the greatest WNBA teams of all time, of how much they've meant to the league and its history, but also all the players, from the late, great Kim Pro, God bless and God rest her soul, sadly, for Kim passing away. But, of course, between Cheryl, Tina Thompson, and Cynthia Cooper, so many legends and cornerstones of this league on those 4 teams. Crystal, what does it mean to you, though, to see Cheryl Swoops get inducted into the Hall of Fame today?
I think it's big. Cheryl Swoops was one of the reasons why I started watching and wanting to play basketball. I think it's good that we are even though we've kind of been doing it for a while now, but I think it's good that we are finally realizing that there are women's greats in the game, and that there are a lot more. There's a lot more things that obviously the public needs to know when it comes to women's basketball. I'm grateful that they are showing the world that us women's basketball players have Hall of Famers too, and I think it's just amazing. It's big, like Shorty said, she went at every level. But I will say I do think eventually there will be another dynasty. I don't know who will be yet. Things like that are meant to be broken. Who will it be? We don't know. I can
Minnesota.
honestly. You're probably right. Probably Minnesota or Phoenix. They might be the next dynasty. I mean, so I really couldn't say never on that, but I just think it's big that I think now it's better that more women's basketball players are getting recognized for being all-stars and for being just as great as the men were once when they played. So I think it's awesome, and like I said, she was one of the reasons why I started watching and playing basketball.
So, Tanisha, as we go back to you, so with Cheryl Swoops going into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame today, Short in your mind, who is the next WNBA player in the next 5 years that you will see having their photo up in the Ring of Honor in Springfield at the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame? Who do you think and why?
That is an interesting question. I'm trying to think who else. Who has Don Staley already been inducted?
Don Staley's in there. Don Staley. You know about that one.
Okay, so they already have Don Staley.
Yep.
I'm just trying to think of who comes to mind. I know that there's DT too, but I'm talking about as far as immediate. I think it's going to take DT a couple of years. She's going to have to be a couple of years removed before being inducted. But a name that came up who just recently retired. People are talking about actually wondering if Lauren Jackson would be, eligible to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So that's definitely that's definitely a name that comes on the top of my head right now. Is possibly Lauren Jackson within the next few years.
So again, folks, quickly, guys, a refresher again. It's a 5-year waiting period that you have to wait once you retire before you can be eligible for the Hall of Fame. So Crystal. Shorty is going with LJ. How about you?
I mean, when Tamika Catchings has done her 5 years, she'll definitely be a Hall of Famer. But I mean, that's kind of like what she said about DT. That's so far away. But people like DT are definitely going to get in there when she retires. Tamika Catchings. Lauren Jackson deserves to get in. Sue Bird, whenever she retires, is probably going to make it. So I mean, it's so many people that come to mind. I mean, we just have to wait to see what happens when those 5 years are up for them.
And we're going to go on the chat box, folks, to say hello to our sixth man of the year, the man of the hour, man with the power, too sweet to be sour, Todd Mintz, who talks about Cheryl Swoops, guys. He says, Cheryl was a great leader and mentor. She was dominant at every level of play, as Shorty alluded to. Titles are proof of her legacy and having the long career she did. To end his thoughts on Cheryl Swoops going in to the Naismith Pro Basketball Hall of Fame in Springfield, Mass. This season, she's among the 10 people going into the Hall of Fame from both sides of the ball between the NBA and WNBA as well. Shorty, we had 2 moves made. One made before we announced the move about Essence Carson made by the Minnesota Lynx, who had signed 2 players to training camp deals that include Keisha Hampton and former Spark and former San Diego State standout star Courtney Clements, both to training camp contracts. So obviously, Shorty, Crystal has this interesting theory about that in a couple years that the Lynx are going to go back to being how it used to be for Minnesota in regards to once, a few players probably retire or whatnot, that, they may be falling off the face of the earth perhaps and, losing that championship luster perhaps because of how of kind of like how Minnesota just wants to like bypass draft day. And I think, and we've seen that trend though lately. But again, here's 2 more training camp signings made. Again, one by a journeywoman and Courtney Clements, who used to play at SDSU, had gone to Chicago, came to LA for a bit, and then is now with Minnesota. So Shorty, with these 2 moves made, obviously, is this more of obviously the training camp deal, or is Minnesota potentially looking to kind of fill voids perhaps for the future in your mind?
As of right now, it's too early to predict, so I'll just go with, training camp deals, trying to fill out who they might want to add so far to the roster. But ultimately, I think Eric, who's not here tonight, brought it up a few shows back that Cheryl Reeve is the kind of coach that's going to want to ride not only her starters, but just her main players. So she's basically going to ride with them to the end. I'm not sure if she is interested in developing a new crop of players or bringing in new blood or whatever the case may be. I think she's going to ride her Olympians basically until the wheels fall off. So she's definitely bringing those two players in, giving them a shot, giving them a look, but uh, it will be seen whether they make the roster for long term or not.
And Chris, what's something that you brought up though during either off-air hangouts or on the show is, or more so, excuse me, more so off-air is, the fact that Cheryl Reeve, is kind of a coach that either has very little to no patience with rookies or draft picks, and like Shorty said, and like Eric also said, by the way, folks, Eric is on his way to Indianapolis for the title game tomorrow at Bankers Life Fieldhouse. So hopefully we can catch Eric in Indy perhaps, and he'll probably have some good stuff for us to send out on Twitter or whatnot. But Crystal, obviously, like both you and Eric have said about them running their starters really hard, obviously, and perhaps that I think that time clock is ticking down on both Lindsay Whalen and Simone Augustus with both the the years of experience plus those injuries piling up for those two as well. Of course, a lot of both of them are more so Moan missed significant time last season with that brucellosis in her knee last year and even dating back to 2014. So, Crystal, these two moves made, obviously, is this perhaps Minnesota starting to kind of look towards the future, or more than come in for training camp, then we're going to cut you again because the Lynx love their star power and their veteran leaders?
I have to agree with Shorty. It's a little bit too early to tell. But I think maybe she's starting to realize that Lindsay Whalen, not so much really Lindsay Whalen, but Simone Augustus doesn't have that much time left. Simone Augustus has hinted, at retiring soon a couple of times. So I think it's more so them trying to figure out what they're going to do after Simone. I mean, because you still have Maya Moore, who's young, and Lindsay Whalen, if she's healthy, she could probably still give Minnesota a couple of good years. So I think they're trying to see what they can do, but I think it still is a little bit too early to tell.
So again, folks, the two training camp signees by the Lynx again were Keisha Hampton and Courtney Clements made on the 30th. And guys, getting back to Todd again, he wants to bring up the comments once more in the chat box. Todd says the comments were the best ever. I remember Cheryl in her last trying year, coming into Los Angeles with a very bad Tulsa team, scoring 27 or so to beat the Sparks with the Shock in her one of her final years in the league. And, of course, again, folks, Cheryl swoops into the Hall of Fame just announced this morning and earlier today as well. And then, guys, probably the most interesting move made of the offseason perhaps for both teams or for all the teams, short of the LA Sparks, signing longtime vet and former Seattle Storm player Ann Waters to a contract on April Fool's Day back on April 1st. But Shorty obviously is not a April Fool's joke, but obviously the Sparks bring in some more veteran leadership and veteran presence to the team. Of course, Ann Waters formerly playing under head coach Brian Nagler, but of course, Shorty, there is that other side of the story though where Ann has not played in the WNBA for at least the past 3 seasons, either playing overseas or dealing with injury problems or stuff off the floor. Shorty, what do you make about this move though by the Sparks bringing in obviously a veteran leader, but of course someone that's not played in the league in the past 3 seasons?
I was pretty much surprised. I was like, I seen the press release and I was like, what? But throughout my confusion, this signing pretty much illustrates that Mariana Tolo will not be playing in the WNBA this summer. As we all know, she's still rehabbing, from the torn ACL. Also, she will be playing in the Olympics in Rio with the Aussie national team. So it makes the signing for Ann Waters, it makes sense. So basically, LA is going to suspend both Williams and Tolo, and then they use the cap cash for that to bring in Carson and Waters with that. So it makes sense. And even though I was puzzled because, as you already stated, she's been 3 years removed out of WNBA since then. So I'm like, is she still any good or whatever? But from what I'm hearing, because sadly I have not been able to watch much overseas play this season, but I heard, she's still, solid overseas, if I'm not mistaken, with Galatasaray. So I heard she's still putting up decent numbers with that team. So as long as she's still putting up decent numbers, then hopefully she can come over with LA and showcase whatever she has left here.
You know, Crystal, obviously, so LA kind of, LA's been, they've been a off-season roller coaster a little bit. Obviously, they make the trade for Raquana Williams. They send Aaron Phillips in the swapping of the draft picks and the number one pick in the first-round pick for 2017 to Dallas. Raquana Williams sadly injures her Achilles playing overseas. So there's one, downside, one strike on the LA report card. Okay, then they fill the void with Essence Carson, which I thought was a very smart move, very good move made by Penny Toller. But then here it's kind of like, you're bringing a player that's been 3 years removed from the game or from the league. And obviously, Crystal, we saw that 1 year helps being away from the league, taking the time off. But KT, I'd probably question, though, 3 years away, though, is kind of like a, I'd say. What are your thoughts, though, about LA bringing in Ann Myers? Obviously, or Ann Waters. I mean, obviously it's, veteran leadership, plus without Tolo being gone, of course, for the Olympics this year as well. So what do you make of the signing, though, and why?
I thought it was an April Fool's joke. I'm not going to lie. They said Ann Waters, and I was like, whoa, what? My God. Okay, Ann Waters is like 130 years old, which is one thing. I'm not saying age is a factor because you have people who are up in age. Look at Tamika Catchings, up in age, still plays at a high level. Same with Diana Taurasi. But I don't really like that signing. I don't like that signing. We got a decent signing in Essence Carson. We had a trade that a lot of us felt shouldn't have been made in the Raquana Williams thing. Unfortunately, she got hurt. You can't really say anything about injuries. Injuries suck. That happens, and that's nobody's fault. But the Ann Waters thing. Was there literally no one else? Like, was Keisha from up the street not available? Because I don't know, but I don't know how I feel. Like, I'm not, and this is no disrespect to Ann Waters, because Ann Waters obviously, is a vet. She is a decent player, but I just don't know if she can help LA in their system. I mean, everyone had a fear that Brian Agler would start to bring the Golden Girls over, and I think he's starting to bring them over, and that was one of the biggest issues a lot of LA fans, we questioned, when we heard that he was coming over. We didn't want an old team. I mean, LA's still fairly young, but Ann Waters probably added like 100 years to that roster. Again, no disrespect to Ann Waters, because I think Ann Waters is cool, but I just don't know, especially with her being out for 3 years, I just don't know if she can still, play in the WNBA level. But all we can do is say we'll see how the summer goes. And if not, there's going to be a lot of tears.
And Tanisha, that's like me being away from baseball for 4 years. If I try to go back and play in a game, I would, add 104 years of age to my roster, whether it was college or whatever it may be, local adult league or something. But, obviously, I don't want to question the 1 year sitting out, as we saw what it did for Candace Parker this year. The sitting half the season helped her out big time, and you can only imagine what it's going to do for DT and Penny when they start off their season against the Lynx in a couple of weeks on May 14th. So, obviously, you see what half the year or a full year does, but I just don't know about 3. I mean, that's asking, quite a lot to have 3 years away from the sport and try to come back and play. But again, the big news again, folks, or not really big news, but again, the LA Sparks on Friday made the signing, of course, of Ann Waters to a contract, and we'll check in with Todd again and see what he says about Ann Waters. Todd says if Ann's playing time stops Jen Hampson, who I want to see develop, and if this kills her time, I don't like the move. And I think, Shorty, that's a big thing, though, as well, is, Jen Hampson also had that 1 year of eligibility left to go back and play and finish her volleyball career at BYU and Provo, obviously, and we kind of saw when she did play, either she was a bit uncomfortable or, as Crystal brought up, though, as well, has not grown into her 6'8" body just yet, and we saw how it was last season a little bit. But I think, though, that there's upside. So more so, I think Todd's saying that if Waters can't mentor Hampson and help out perhaps with either, being that veteran presence and mentoring a younger player, then he says, the deal is a bust. But what do you think, though, about this and why?
I definitely agree with Todd on this. And as Crystal, who likes to dinosaur shame, has already alluded to, is that we as LA fans, we figured that he was going to come in and bring some of his former veteran players who previously played on his team, with the Seattle Storm, and that is exactly what he is doing. I hope that does not impede the development of Jen Hampson because she did not get much playing time, last year, and she didn't get much playing time on a team that was badly injured and missing players and so forth, and he still wouldn't even give her a shot. And for the minutes that she did get, I mean, yeah, she probably, kind of played somewhat. She didn't get to play as freely as she probably would have because she barely saw time on the floor. But there were a few games where her presence was felt. I remember in one game, like just before the playoffs happened, she scored 12 points, also blocks. Oh my goodness. She was big at BYU for being like the ultimate shot blocker. So we did see some of that, in the minutes that she did play, in her rookie season. But yes, hopefully, the post players along with Waters can, help her work on her development and things like that. But yes, Waters is pretty much coming in to take minutes away from Hampson, who could really use them.
And Crystal, as much as we already had feared about Brian Agler going this route about bringing the Seattle Storm south to Southern California, as much as we feared that perhaps when when he was brought in to become the new head coach of the Sparks, with him bringing in former talent, of course, to the Sparks. Again, Crystal. Again, Todd says again, if Ann's playing time stops Jen Hampson, who he wants to see develop, and if this kills her playing time, he does not like the move made. What do you think, though, and why?
I agree. I mean, I feel like if she isn't there to help, if she isn't there to help Hanson kind of, teach her the ropes or show the ropes, and I feel like that was a bad signing. I mean, once Hampton figured out her body, like once she starts to get how her body works and once she starts to figure out, her length and her size, I think she'll be a really good shot blocker. I mean, like Shorty said, we saw that in some games. We also saw her get dunked on too, but we ain't gonna talk about that. But we also, we saw her try to improve in some games. But I mean, but I don't even know if Ann Waters is much of an improvement. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know. I can agree though. I feel like that's probably going to take minutes away from a young player who can learn how to develop her body, learn how to develop and become a premier shot blocker in the league. But I don't know. That's still confusing to me. But I do agree with what Todd is saying.
And a disclaimer, folks, no rims were lowered in the making of that BG dunk over Jen Hampson, so don't even go there with us. But again, folks, LA Sparks bring in veteran presence and player that's been away for 3 years, but they do bring in Ann Waters into the picture for the season, signed back on April 1st to a contract for the 2016 season. Guys, not much other news really to get to, except for really there is no other news. I think we pretty much have touched base on all the big news. But again, guys, I think we'll just probably go back to once more, guys, going to be revisiting the draft again, guys. 10 days from now will be the 2016 WNBA draft once more again. And guys, that actually leads me to a point. Guys, breaking news earlier today, reported by Doug Feinberg today. Aerial Powers out of Michigan State declaring for the WNBA draft, which I believe, guys, shakes up the entire first-round picture now that she has declared out of Michigan State. Right now, Shorty, what I read in a article before we came on air, if she does go in the top 5, it'll mark the first time in about, I want to say, roughly 7 or 9 years that a Michigan State player has gone that high in a WNBA draft, I want to say, in recent memory. So, Shorty, now that Aerial Powers has declared, how much does her, declaration for the draft shake up things in round 1?
It definitely is going to shake up a few things, especially in the first round. It just quickly comes to me that, during the discussion in last year's draft where we talk about juniors such as Jewel Lloyd and Zoe B coming out early, and people were wondering if this would potentially start becoming a trend amongst the college players, especially in women's basketball for the juniors to start declaring early. And it may still be a little early to determine that, but I mean, we are seeing some flashes of a trend so far because we had two juniors to come out last year and then one coming out, this year in Aerial Powers. But as far as her draft stock, I mean, she definitely did had a great tournament run. I mean, so her ceiling is pretty high. I can see her possibly going maybe from 1 to possibly 7, depending on team's needs or whatever the case may be. I know I have seen some mock drafts that put her at number 6 to Los Angeles, but with the recent moves that LA just made, including with getting Essence Carson's, I mean, there's really no need for Aerial Powers. So I can see her going at least between 1 through 5, or if not, 7 through 12. I just don't think she will be a pick for Los Angeles, but she'll be somewhere in that first round group, nevertheless.
So again, Crystal, Aerial Powers out of Sparty again declares for the draft today again. And again, that really has shaken up the draft order or the draft selection, mock draft selection at least, for the first round on a lot of the mock draft sites. Crystal, before we get to anything further about the draft, what are your thoughts though about seeing another junior declare for the drafts and leaving behind one more year of eligibility to play?
Like Shorty said, I think we're going to start seeing a trend. I mean, the rule was you just have to be, I believe it's 2 years removed from high school, so you're going to start seeing a lot of women who are really, really want to be in the league to probably start leaving as juniors. But, how awesome is her name, Aerial Powers? I think that's like one of the greatest, that and Jordan Hooper are like two of the greatest basketball names ever. Like, Aerial Powers and Jordan Hooper, those are the greatest basketball names. But I mean, I think it's exciting. I'm actually excited to see where Aerial Powers ends up. It's hard to say where she'll go because after 1 and 2, it's a shakeup. After that, anybody can go anywhere, and I don't know. I mean, maybe she'll creep up the ladder. Maybe she won't. Like Shorty said, I don't know if LA would draft her anyway because we all know how LA does in the drafts. No shade. But I don't know. It's interesting to see where she'll end up. I'm happy she declared because she only had like a little bit of time to declare, and I guess she's ready. So we'll see where she goes.
Now, Shorty, in spite of the fact that you saw a mock draft that had Powers to LA, I beg to differ. The mock draft I have, Shorty, still has LA taking Tiffany Mitchell at number 6 overall. Right now, the current round 1 mock draft order is Stewart, Powers, Jefferson 1 through 3, Tuck, Banham, Mitchell. That's going 4 through 6. Jonquel Jones, Courtney Williams, and Cooper 7, 8, 9, and then Boyette, Hamblin, and Holmes 10 through 12 in that first round mock draft. So again, you have Stewart, Powers, and Jefferson 1 through 3. And then 4, 5, and 6 is Tuck Banham and Tiffany Mitchell out of South Carolina. 7, 8, 9 would be Jonquel Jones, Courtney Williams, and Kalia Cooper. 7, 8, 9, and then Imani Boyette, Ruth Hamlin, and Bria Holmes. 10, 11, and 12. So Shorty, that you see and hear that draft, and you still hear Mitchell Mitchell to Los Angeles, and then you hear the other few picks there. What do you make of that mock draft and why?
I definitely think it's interesting. I guess my main focus is just on LA. Of course, I agree with it for the most part, but Mitchell at 6 for us is definitely would be my preferred choice, either her or Courtney Williams out of USF, because at this point, LA's main need, you could say, is not just a guard, but a point guard at that. Even though I believe Mitchell can play the 1 and 2, but still, we specifically need a point guard, because we really don't have a true point guard. Even when LA made that trade for Raquan Williams, who's still not a true point guard. And then you got Christy Tolliver, who is not a true point guard. So I'm just dragging everything out because like I said, I agree with that mock draft. And at 6 for Los Angeles, Tiffany Mitchell, I definitely hope that comes to pass.
And then Crystal Au Contraire, here we go again with Connecticut at 3 and 4, picking Jefferson and Tuck, both out of UConn. So it's like they just can't escape their, that state or that city to play in. So Crystal, obviously you see those, so you see Connecticut taking 2 more UConn players as much like they need to have more UConn players playing in the Connecticut area for one. And then you also do, again, like I said, you do see Tiffany Mitchell going to LA at 6. Crystal, what other draft selections in this mock draft stand out, though, other than perhaps more UConn players staying in Connecticut when they kind of want to leave town, perhaps? And then, of course, Mitchell going to Los Angeles, perhaps. What do you see and why?
I don't know. I mean, when it comes to mock drafts, like I said, they're very hard to to dictate. Normally 1 and 2 are probably the most accurate. I mean, I really didn't do a mock draft. I kind of just is like whatever happens happens because everything's kind of so close. But if we got Tiffany Mitchell, that would be very appreciated. Like Shorty said, we really don't have that many options as point guard. I mean, yeah, thinking about who's on the roster right now in the training camp. I mean, if I can't think of her name. Who did LA just sign to a training camp roster point guard? I can't think.
Jasmine Lister.
There we go, Lister. I'm drawing a blank. Sorry about that. If Jasmine Lister makes it, then I guess we will have a decent enough guard to work with. But LA's in a guard drought, just like how there's no water in LA, there's no point guards in LA, and something's got to get done quickly. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, just a guard. We just need somebody. That's all I can say. Just draft a person who has guard-like skill that can play that position.
Shorty, as much as we have seen, greatness, in the draft go other places, Shorty, and you've seen some teams that, that you may think are set on a player, but then they go a different direction. For instance, the Sparks last season slated all year in mock drafts across the board to have Brittany Boyd out of Cal, and yet they go to number 7, Boyd's on the board, but yet they pick Crystal Bradford. And then also I should mention too, guys, that it's not really easy or fun being an LA draft pick. 2 of the 3 that LA had last year were both cut off the roster last year, both Sierra Burdick from Tennessee, who was drafted, and also, of course, Ananita Slaughter was also cut off that roster last season. So, Shorty, you've seen Los Angeles really struggle in the draft in the past few years, and you've seen other teams also struggle or make big-time moves like Bill Lambier working the trade out with the Stars last year, getting Brittany Boyd at number 8 overall last season when New York had no first-round pick because they dealt all them way to the Sun for this year's draft. Shorty, I guess I'd probably ask, in regards to Los Angeles and their draft day woes, what can you really just talk about? Because I know that we had brought this up a few weeks ago, this past a few shows ago, in regards to just seeing how LA, kind of has a golden, a player of great caliber, on a silver platter, but yet they go a different direction. I know that we've seen that the past few years, but what do you think, though, and why?
It's just people who are making moves, such as the GM and also the coach. I mean, I don't know what supposedly goes on in the war room, aka draft room there, but they make some questionable moves. And I'm not going to place all the blame on the GM because the GM, our GM, whose name I won't say, so I won't be throwing any shade, but I mean, she admits in certain interviews that she also lets the coach as well put their input on, players who they are targeting. So it's on them both, it's been on the GM and the coach to make, those draft moves. And yes, the mock drafts always say one thing, but those two together always do another because no disrespect, but Crystal Bradford was basically, she just was thrown out of left field. I mean, I wasn't even picking her to get drafted, much less at number 7, but she ultimately did, and she showcased what little she could provide to the team last year. So that's that. But Yes, LA has always made questionable. I'll just say this before I get off the subject, and is that LA does great with lottery picks because the last few lottery picks that they had, they had NECA, they had Gentel in 2011. Now with lottery picks, they do well, but anything outside of the lottery has been very questionable. So we do this time have another pick that's outside of the lottery. So uh, for the coach and GM, Tiffany Mitchell, if she's still on the board at number 6, don't mess this up.
You know, Crystal, we talked about this a while back, a few shows ago, again, about how you've seen LA and then maybe even other teams also kind of have the same issue or problem with, draft day selections. Like Chris and like Shorty said, though, KT, LA is dynamite in the lottery, of course. Parker in 2008, NECA and Lav recently, notably among those two. But again, Crystal, any thoughts again about, obviously, mock drafts are, that's why they're called mock. They're nothing official. It's just, getting your ideas out there. But, when even experts are saying that, Boyd to Los Angeles last season, and of course that didn't go to fruition, of course. But, I guess I'd also ask, though, about, perhaps questionable moves made in the war room by, not just LA, but other teams, though, on draft day, perhaps.
Well, before I get into my answer, our colleague Eric actually gave me his mock draft, and I pulled it up, and he actually he has LA picking Rachel Banham instead of Tiffany Mitchell. He actually has Tiffany Mitchell going to Phoenix, and if she goes to Phoenix, that would be pretty dangerous because that team already as a whole is pretty scary. We don't want Phoenix. Listen, we don't want you to draft anybody who's going to beat LA because then LA is not going to make it to the playoffs. And especially with this new format and who we have on the roster now, that's a struggle. So if you're out there listening, Phoenix executives, please don't pick up Rachel Banham. I think April Sykes is available. Y'all can gladly go and pick her up. Okay, so to answer that question, your question, you know what? Repeat the question. I kind of forgot just that quick.
I would probably just ask about, your thoughts about, some, questionable draft day moves made by not just LA but other teams as well.
I mean, there's been a lot of those, especially if you're talking about LA. I know you're talking about in general, but I mean, sometimes you don't know, which is the gift and the curse about the draft. You don't know what you're getting sometimes because you can watch a player on film and you can watch them in person, but when they get to the WNBA, it's a whole different ball game. The game's faster. You get to see people who really like where their IQs are. You get to see how well they communicate with the other players. You get to see how well they listen to coaches. So it's a different ball game. I mean, like Shorty said, LA has kind of been bad at the draft for the last few years. I mean, unless it's lottery, then it's all butterflies and cupcakes. But if it's the draft, I mean, honestly, when it comes to draft time, being an LA fan, I kind of get scared because I'm like, oh, who are they gonna take out the dumpster now? But I think Crystal Bradford, I think we could actually, if she actually improves, I think that draft may work. If she slows down a little bit and starts letting the game come to her, I have a feeling she could be a weapon for LA. Well, I think one of LA's biggest draft mess-ups was still April Sykes to this day. I'm just going to go out there and say it. I'm just saying. So Phoenix or whoever, she's available. Go ahead and get that. We don't want her.
All right, so you heard it right there first and foremost for all you Phoenix fans, and if anyone under the ownership group or anyone that may work for Ann Myers Drysdale, you've been put on notice by Crystal Thomas. So all your frustration and mentions can go that way to that side of the panel, not to the other side of the panel. Over again, folks, in 10 days, WNBA draft. Now, folks, our draft day coverage, we are right now still planning on having a actual draft day party on the network. You can say at 4 o'clock Pacific when the thing gets underway. Well, then we'll have an extended edition of WNBA 365 Draft Day Central beginning at 9:30 p.m. on April 14th that evening. We'll go on for about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours at most, talk about the draft and the upcoming training camp and storylines and everything else. But again, right now, tentatively, put down in your calendar or whatever it's going to be. Again, a 2016 WNBA 365 draft day party at 4 o'clock p.m. Right as the draft gets underway. Back here on WNBA 365, and then at 9 o'clock or 9:30 that night, we'll have our extended edition of WNBA 365 again coming away, just in recapping the whole draft and talking about storylines and so on and so forth. Now, folks, I have a very important and urgent notice for you folks that are partaking in our WNBA 365 ESPN.com tournament challenge in regards to the prizes that we're giving away. Right now, you're going to have to bear with me for a little bit. Right now, there's a little bit of a financial strain and sticky financial situation I'm stuck in right now. So please give me some extra time to give out those prizes. We will still give them out, but right now it's just not really good right now with the piggy banks and Brinks trucks and the Brinks trucks and debit cards right now. So give me a little extra time, but I will promise you this: you will have your prizes sometime during the season. And of course, I will still be giving away those 2 tickets to a WNBA game, but it won't be right away as soon as the tournament ends, because right now I'm in the red. I'm, throw me a life raft or something, folks. But as soon as some paychecks come in from my 2 gigs and 2 jobs, we will for sure give out prizes. But again, folks, right now it won't be right away. But again, folks, there's a bit of a minor financial problem going on with myself. But again, we will, trust me, we will be giving away your prizes, the trading cards, and the grand prize to the winners. But again, it will not come to you ASAP. So again, I'll just pretty much say this, folks: you will get your prize by the end of the 2016 season. Even if it includes a finals game, you will have your prizes sometime before seasons ends. I just want to throw that out there because right now it's a little bit sticky, what I'm stuck in right now. So again, just want to throw it out there. But again, prizes will still be given out to the winners of our tournament challenge, but again, they will not be as soon as possible. But again, we will have those for you folks. So again, don't flip out, don't email me, don't call me, don't text me. You will be getting your prizes once this is all said and done. As soon as a few things come in the mail and once tax day goes by, again, you will have all your goodies, either your 2 tickets to a game or your trading cards. You will have those, folks. I will guarantee and promise you that right here and right now. So thanks for bearing with me, folks, during this little bit of a rough economic time I'm kind of stuck in, but then again, we're all stuck in these things right now. But again, just want to throw it out there once more. But again, prizes will be distributed sometime this season. So please don't get upset. Don't be frustrated. Don't be upset. Don't come crying or don't come and beat down my studio door and kill me because I didn't give you a prize. You will get your prizes once everything is all said and done. Okay, guys, again, once more, Shorty and Crystal, again, tomorrow night, the final night of the 2016 NCAA women's basketball season. Again, UConn taking on Syracuse tomorrow night at 4:30 p.m. The game can be seen on the ESPN family of networks. Shorty, before we get out here for the night, your last thoughts on tomorrow's game.
My final thoughts is UConn takes it all. Rihanna Stewart's name, MVP, and then she'll, get prepared for the draft and then be named the #1 overall pick. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
So, Crystal, you heard from Shorty. How about you?
I would say UConn wins it, but I have a feeling it's going to be a really close game. Something in my bones is telling me that, but I do believe UConn will win the game, and I think it's going to be an exciting game, and I think everybody should tune in if they can.
All right, folks. So again, tomorrow night, UConn-Syracuse for all the marbles for the NCAA Women's Basketball Championship from Bankers Life Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana. Game time again tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Pacific, and coming up tomorrow night, following the game, tomorrow night at 9 o'clock p.m., we'll have the final WNBA U show of the season to recap the 2016 NCAA Women's Basketball D1 Tournament National Title game. With that, though, folks, until tomorrow night, as we get ready for the title game tomorrow. For Crystal Thomas and Tanisha Stewart, both up in Los Angeles, and for our Sixth Man of the Year, Todd Mintz, joining us in the chat box from the greater Orange County area. This is Cal McClurg from Studio 171 in San Diego signing off. Until tomorrow night, folks, this has been the WNBA 365 Network. Till tomorrow night, folks, enjoy the game, and we'll see you tomorrow night for more college talk and more. Till then, good night. Bye-bye.